Welcome to the Sacred 8 Roadshow, where cosmic love meets conscious living.
We're Juji and Nikki, partners in life and purpose, and we're so glad you're here.
This podcast is a space for truth tellers, heart healers, and those walking the path of deep love and self-remembrance.
We'll explore human design, emotional wisdom, and the real work of conscious relationship.
And we're proudly sponsored by Hello Zia, your 24/7 AI relationship coach for healing, growth, and sacred love. Let's dive in.
Today we interviewed our friend Sukhi.
Sukhi is a clinically trained counselor, psychedelic therapist, and transformational coach.
Devoted wife and mother to 3 wild boys, Sukhi has used her motherhood journey and conscious relationship as the portals to her own spiritual evolution.
Bridging psychology, somatic healing, inner child work, and altered states of consciousness, Sukhi leads her clients back to the truth of who they really are, whole and healed.
We had a blast talking to Sukhi and exploring these simple but unusual concepts.
We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Also, if you have a topic or a question, please put it in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. We are so excited to have our new friend, Sukhi, here to share her journey with us. And, you know, Sukhi, we always start by asking people how they got started on their awakening. What was the catalyst? What kickstarted this whole thing for you?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I was thinking about that before I came on, and I've always been spiritually curious, and I do remember kind of when I watched What the Bleep and The Secret, it kind of unlocked something for me, and I think I was in my, either my late teens or 20s at that time, and so that was just kind of like, what? But it was actually, I would say, when I became a mother. I have 3 boys, and they were all, my first son was followed by my second son. I was 3 months pregnant and announced my pregnancy at his first birthday. So they're only 18 months apart. And then I had another son 2.5 years later. And so it was a really challenging journey for me. It was like I was overwhelmed and not happy, definitely had a toll on my relationship with my husband, where I really took on this like martyr and victim role. And it was actually through that, wanting to be a better mom to my kids, wanting to break patterns from my culture, from my family, honoring them for who they individually are versus, they actually, even though you have 3 boys, they're all very different. And it was really more my suffering that was the catalyst. And so I started working on like learning more about conscious parenting. And when you actually dive deep into it, Dr. Shefali, who's kind of the godmother of conscious parenting and actually a friend of ours as well, she's amazing. She really orients people back to every single thing that is a trigger in your child that you feel is actually a wound from when you were a child yourself. Or it's some kind of conditioning that you've learned that your kid's supposed to be like this, that you're supposed to be like that things are supposed to look this way. And so really every single time you have a trigger, it's an opportunity to look at yourself and to tend to your emotional wounds. And that was really interesting because, with a child, you can kind of get it. Like, this baby is clearly not trying to hurt me, But then when you transfer that to everyone in the world, your husband, that when he triggers you, it's still your trigger, that it's still not even about him. And so that really opened up a lot for me. And then, in those times, even though, I was at home a lot with the kids, so I wasn't able to work in the world as much, I was doing my growth work. I was doing the courses. I was doing some somatic healing, doing some psychedelic work. And so it kind of opened up this portal to my growth and my expansion and really finding empowerment in that every single time something was hurting me or painful for me or was creating anxiety or any kind of feeling, that was like an indicator to look inside. And actually and then when you do that enough times, you actually realize that you're more powerful, know yourself better, in a better position on the other side of it. So even though it's like super shitty going through it, now I know enough to be like, on the other side, you've learned something new. On the other side, there's an initiation that's happened for you. So it's like, might be hard to feel it in that moment, but knowing that and now having done it more and more, I just know it to be true for me and for my clients.
I feel like there's a neutrality on the other side that is such a peace inside yourself when you've experienced the most painful thing and then all of a sudden, poof.
And you just gain such a respect for yourself, even going through, like, I've not felt great the last few days, and even that, I just have this newfound love for my body and compassion for my body, and I trust my body and I trust my mind to get through this because I know it's happening for my best interest.
Totally. And even like getting sick, it's so funny because like I always find this whenever I get sick, it's like I had to get sick to appreciate how healthy I was. It's like you feel sick and you're like, damn, this is what it feels like to be achy, to have a stuffy nose and I have a headache. And then you're like, oh. And then when you're on the other side, I'm like, oh, I feel like myself again. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful. Yeah. So it's like, and really seeing that every trigger, every pain point, every kind of trial that we go through in life is a macro and the micro. It's all the same. It's like for whatever reason that came through, it was like either you were ready to work through that trigger at this time and heal that wound in this way, or it's like to just have gratitude for what we freaking already have, what we take for granted, right? So yeah.
I want to talk about your clients and what you do and all of that, but there is a question that came to me as you were talking about triggers that were coming at you from a baby. They're clearly not trying to hurt you, but you're experiencing it. Can you remember something that maybe was the entry point for that realization that this was something that you needed to attend to?
A lot of times what would happen is like, the way that we were showing up for our kids was really different than the way my parents did, right? Like we were an immigrant family. My parents were lovely. They're amazing humans, but, unconscious to the fact that each child has their own soul and has their own gifts and that there's more than just being a good girl. And so, when it would be times where we would show up, I would show up for my kids and like hold them in their big feelings and allow them to say, like, I hate you or, throw stuff or do something. And it's like to stay in love and stay with that. It was hard. It was almost like for me, it would be like, I would do it. And then I would be like, snap. And then I go crazy and yell. And so it was like looking at myself and being like, what's up with that? Because, one part of me knows that this poor little dude is just, tired, whatever, and is just having his challenges. But it's like there's this other little girl in me who's just feels like, there can be many layers to it. What my discovery, it was like, one was that I never felt taken care of. I never felt that I had the freedom to have my big feelings. And so I'm seeing in my child that they're getting this freedom to be this way. And it brings up in me this reality that I didn't have that. So there's like that layer of pain. There's another layer of pain or like of kind of discomfort or trigger is around like, if I had done that, I would have gotten smacked. Or, if I had done that, I would have been whatever. And so it's like this tension you feel around, yeah, maybe it didn't feel good for my parents to do that, but maybe then they would behave better, and it's like your own kind of construct of like, am I screwing up? Am I just letting them be wild, feral kids and they're never going to like get jobs, so it's like you're also navigating like what these projections you have on them and this idea of what you think you're supposed to be doing or what you are doing and what you think you're supposed to be able to handle. Like, why am all these moms look so happy and fine at the park? Why am I feeling all this pain? And so it's, it's multifactorial, but it requires an exploration inwards, right? And tending to that little girl in me that didn't get that support, really getting clarity around what I'm choosing to be and how I'm choosing to show up as a mom, and resting in like confidence of that, because it's not something I learned, that I saw an example of. And so there's just many layers to it, but it just requires an examination, and it doesn't just poof go away either. But it's also, the logistical stuff of taking care of yourself. Like, oh, how am I being a martyr and not even taking care of my needs? Where do I need to take a break? It's just using like an innocent kind of trigger from your kids that can really become this opening to really be able to heal on many levels.
And just having that awareness is like the first step, right? Being able to just take that moment and pause long enough to go, wait a minute, let me explore this a little bit more. What is this?
Yeah. Instead of it being like, if you only just put your shoes on when I told you to, I wouldn't get mad. It's like, if only they just behaved and listened the first time or the first 8 times. And it's like, what's the difference if they listen the first time or the 8th time or not? It's really, they're just kids. They're just doing kid thing. And like, how does it become personal all of a sudden when now on the 8th time they didn't do it? And so, yeah, it is just having that awareness. And next it was Gordy, right? It was my husband. It was like really learning that when he acts a certain way, even if like objectively you might say it's bit dicky as well, still, like, even if he's being a dick, even if whatever, it's like, it's still my trigger to heal. And I have like one of the stories I've discovered about myself in doing my own inner work, Nikki, like, like just doing some of that, getting to know my inner little girl that shows up a lot of the times when I'm feeling hurt, is I feel misunderstood. It's like all I was doing was trying to be good and I'm being perceived as bad.
Yes.
So how does that show up? It's like if I'm, working my ass off and then something messes up and then I get blamed for it. And it's like, that level of like, or even my kids, like they'll be like, I'm trying to set boundaries around screen time or something. And I'm wanting them, I'm really looking out for their highest good. And then they think I'm being mean. And it's just like, the pain of being misunderstood, because I so often felt like I was the bad guy in the family. I was the black sheep of the family. And yet all I was ever trying to do was be a good girl. And so now I've learned to understand that part of me. So instead of being reactive back to my 13-year-old who's saying lots of not nice things about me, or to Gordy when he's, holding me responsible for something when I was just trying my best, it's like, I get to actually not lash out at them, because that would be my default. And then I get to actually go in and tend to that little girl that's like, yeah, you were just trying your best. You were just, working hard and doing your thing, and then it screwed up, and I see that you're good. I see that you're good. And so it's like, yeah, really developing that relationship with that inner little girl. And she's the one that shows up often for me.
Yeah, I've had all ages show up from 2 to 8 and 10, constantly putting my hand on my heart and being like, I see you, I hear you,
yeah,
I love you, and I will not abandon you. I've got you, you're okay. And just knowing that us as who we are in this moment is absolutely perfect and perfection, right? It's a different version of us, another aspect of us that is always the one that's triggered. So being able to separate the two and observe and see who it is showing up. And it's as simple as closing your eyes and just asking, how old are you? And they, boom, you just listen to that first instinct that comes up, and sometimes your brain wants to rewire and override it. And you're like, no, just listen to the first thing that shows up. And it'll tell you, and you just go and talk to them and love them. And sometimes they just need a hug. Sometimes they just need to be heard and say what they need to say. And then just being able to bring them home with you and say, you're here now and I have you. It brings so much relief.
Mm-hmm. It really does. I know, it's so beautiful. I love how you're naming that too, Nikki, of just like, if you allow yourself to, if you give yourself permission to, that answer just comes right through. Like the age, you ask yourself that question and that age that will pop out, and you ask, what is it that you need? And then they will let you know. And it is just a matter of us kind of unlearning that we only can use our prefrontal cortex to answer things, and actually allowing that truth to come through, because it's super powerful.
And I feel like what you were saying about how you can objectively look at another adult coming at you in a not nice way. But also I feel like once those triggers have been addressed, even if something kind of like, you get that sort of like ping as it's happening in real time. But the thing about being aware of it is that saying, as within, so without. If you don't react, then there could be a reflection back at you from that person being like, actually, I'm sorry, that was unkind, or that was rude. I didn't mean it that way. Because then they can own it instead of you pointing the finger outward. And you don't believe that that's how it's going to go. You believe that you think you need to defend yourself, because who else is going to do it, right? Like nobody else is going to come to your rescue and be like, that was actually a dick move, But when you say, okay, I hear you, just gonna, then they can reflect on that and be like, actually, that didn't come out how I wanted it to, and it will shock you at first. And then you find that eventually the whole relationship can kind of rewire itself, because you've broken the pattern of the way that you just knee-jerk reacted to this same thing. That's where the you always and you never come from in these dynamics. So not only did you create, conscious parenting dynamics, but conscious relationship dynamics in that way.
Totally. And I love that point, because that's exactly how it goes. It's like you go from being in this patterned behavior where then my inner child triggers his inner child, and then my inner child reacts to that. And then, it's just like one upping the other. But it's like, that's absolutely what happened. If we don't engage in that trigger in the ways that we can historically have defended ourselves, it's like all of a sudden it's like a mirror to them, and they get to actually just sit in what they've done, they said or did, or the energy or whatever. And it's not, every single time, but a lot of times. Yeah, I had that happen with my 13-year-old just the other day. I didn't wash his shirt that he wanted to wear to this friend gathering, and I forgot to put it in the dryer. And I mentioned it to me a couple times. And so, legitimately I screwed up, because he had mentioned it multiple times. And he lost it and was just, really upset. And said lots of not nice things. But I knew in my heart, he is really stressed out. He's feeling stressed. He's going to this event. And my my version of me, my misunderstood part, could have totally taken over and ran the show. And I would have been reactive back. But I just got quiet. And I just said, I'm really sorry, buddy. And 5 minutes after his dad left with him in the car, I get a text from him saying, sorry, I got mad at you. Mm-hmm. And I just said, I was like, it's okay, bud. I screwed up and you were stressed out. I love you. Have fun. And he wrote back, thanks, love you, ! And I was like, yes, so good. Yeah. And it was super sweet. So that's like exactly that. And it could have gone a completely different direction if I hadn't been connected to my own inner child wound and just allowed that little reactive girl who was hurting to take the driver's seat. And even in like you said, even in my relationship with Gordy too. And actually, this is a distinction I speak to for my clients too, is like, sometimes, like you said, we're feeling like no one else is going to defend us. No one else is seeing us. I have to be the one to be like, defend myself in this situation. And what I've actually reframed is around the reality that I've discovered that me not reacting in that way is not for them. Because, not for them to not get hurt by my feelings or whatever it is. It's actually a very powerful act of self-love. for me not to react that way. Because if I react that way, I don't get my needs met. I don't actually get heard because my anger or my not nice words have to be ignored by the other person. And so I don't get my needs met. I end up feeling guilty. I have to maybe repair that. And then by then, like that whole initial kind of like boundary violation gets diluted in its potency. And so I'm back to square one. And so when women are like, no, but I have to say something, if you can actually reframe it as like, hey, it's not to protect him or them. It's actually an act of self-love. So you have a more likely outcome of your needs getting met. Putting that around it has been really helpful to not feel like it's us just succumbing to everyone else's needs again and again. And that it's actually an empowered choice that is you oriented.
While we're talking about it, I was wanting to reflect something back to you when you're talking about that conversation with your son and how he put that exclamation point at the end of it. And it really highlighted to me that you also reinforced with him that it's okay if he screws up, you're still going to love him. And how many of us would want that validation from our parents that, we make mistakes, but we don't want to be hated because we did that. Like, oh my God, like you could just almost feel his tension. Oh my gosh, I screwed up. I yelled at my mom. Is she still going to love me? And then to have that conversation and validate that, yes, you still love him.
I've coached a lot of women for the purposes of understanding their kids through human design, which obviously you have experienced as well. But what's really impressive to me is not just when the new insights are being implemented, but any mom anywhere who knows how to repair. Like that's not something that we learned from our parents. That is not a traditional approach to parenting. We're the millennials here, so we know that our parents are like the boomers.
Boomers, yeah.
My parents are immigrants, your parents are immigrants. So it was very much like to have an authority in the household is to never admit wrongdoing. And if you never admit wrongdoing, then you are this omnipotent, infallible human that's almost godlike. And to come down to the level of your child to be like, nope, I'm just as human and just as fallible as you. And I can admit when it was actually my mistake and not, no, you didn't tell me, or whatever would be the natural impulse for previous generations, to really just give that level of comfort to your child. Like, yes, I know.
It's interesting when you see people, and I do think men sometimes have a harder time with the repair and the apology, but I think in general, it's actually a relief. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to be perfect at all. And the fact that I have a tool, which is repair, that I can bring and get to be reconnected with them again and have an opportunity for them to share something that maybe they didn't have an opportunity to share before. I'm so grateful. It actually was a relief when I realized all you need is repair. Like, obviously you don't want to keep screwing up all the time, but it's like, but knowing that you have that, it's actually, a beautiful thing to be able to teach, to model, and for our own selves who, know that there's no way I'm going to be able to keep my cool all the time. I am not one of those people. I'm an Aries, so
My whole family are Aries, I do know. I'm the oddball.
We can embrace it and not let it, our ego come in the way, when we can actually just find ways to get back into our heart. Because that's the thing, is kids can feel it. They can feel it if you're just, kind of trying to sweep it under the rug, or if they can feel your heart soften and you just be like, I'm really sorry, bud, or, oh, you must be feeling really disappointed. Whatever it is, like, they can feel it. They have the sidey sense, and so you can't bullshit them. And so that's our work, is to be able to get into our heart and be able to, and with our partnerships too, with anybody, in our lives. It's rare, that either my husband approaches me or I approach him and I'm actually in my heart, that we can't reconnect instantly, you know, or very quickly. And so I think that's a tool for all of us to be able to do, is just to get into that heart space.
Could not agree more.
Mm-hmm.
So you went through this journey of learning yourself and learning your own triggers and healing, and then you decided to go give others this same. Tell us about how that transfer happened.
Well, I mean, I always knew I was going to be a counselor, like in like, we call it grade 6, not 6th grade, I guess, in the US, where I'm Canadian, but it's like, I always knew I was going to be a counselor. And so I always knew I wanted to do this work and help people. And I went down the, clinical counselor path, and I loved it, and also it felt like, even before I had kids and I was in the field, I always just felt there were constraints to this kind of clinical model. I found that at that time, spirituality wasn't really in the conversation. It was kind of like cloaked as mindfulness. That's how you kind of sneak it in the door. And I just found, yeah. And I just found that, like, I wanted to connect person to person, heart to heart. And, these clients are telling me all of their, most painful experiences, their inner, things they haven't shared with anybody. And I just have to hold this like kind of wall in front of me to stay in my role as a counselor. And I just wanted to have a deeper relationship with people than just... So I want to be able to share stories of like my experiences or other clients' experiences, where in clinical therapy, you're not really encouraged to do that. And I also my focus was really just being in the present moment with clients, not having a stack of, inventories and exercises to try. It was really, it was like really just holding that sacred space for them to feel safe. Yeah, so I have always felt like I'm feel more drawn to, I don't know, being more of a coach, guide in that kind of space. And, through my own journey, and then when I had my 3 kids, 3 under 4 at once, I took a backseat from doing that, but still continued my personal growth through this journey. And really started thinking about psychedelic therapy. I used it as a tool for some of my most expansive, powerful experiences. And then last year, about a year and a half ago, I decided to get trained as a psychedelic assisted therapist at CIIS in San Francisco. It's the only accredited kind of psychedelic therapy program, because I felt like, coming from a clinical background, I wanted to have an accredited diploma. And the psychedelic realm and the underground world is a bit of a Wild West. There's amazing, beautiful practitioners in that world. And there's also people that are not holding that client care experience and the ethics to the highest standard that I feel that they should be, because it's such a vulnerable space. One of the most amazing parts of my diploma that I got to experience was that 1 week of it, one of the trainings was with the MAPS facilitators that did the MDMA clinical trials. So they're the same, therapists that did these clinical trials. We got to watch the whole arc of the experience of clients from, their preparation sessions to during sessions to after. And these facilitators are just absolutely incredible. And so that was like a beautiful experience to really see their presence and how they show up and how they really believe and operate from the essence of our own inner healer is guiding the journey. That was such an incredible thing. And so it was actually in a journey myself that I got that download that this is the work that I meant to be doing as well. And I feel it's really connected to all these other pieces that I've been working on, like whether it's the conscious parenting, the conscious relationship, the somatic work, and obviously the spiritual work. Like it all comes together in this way. Even what we spoke of previously about how I just love helping women and mothers. And, there's such an initiation to becoming a mother And it can be, really challenging. Or there's women that are out there in these positions where they're holding a lot in their workplaces. They're the leaders and they're holding so much. And so, really creating spaces for women to get to be messy and to get to really be held and supported, and to kind of lift some of the, default mode network of them always taking care and like living from what the world has wanted them to be like, and actually getting to heal inside of their body and connect to a trust in themselves, a trust in, and develop a relationship with this wisdom that lives inside of them, that they have access to, but that I just have been cut off from that access.
I was just thinking as you were speaking, the clinical trials that have been put on have mostly, or I guess as the general public sees it, is mostly for people who are suffering from really extreme things like PTSD, right? So we can very clearly measure the difference between somebody who hasn't slept in 40 years because they have nightmares all the time, or they're suffering from flashbacks or something like that. And the fact that this can very clearly show a path to clearing all of that up for them in a very short period of time is incredibly powerful data. But what do you feel for the average person is the benefit? You used the word integration before, and I think that's a really important aspect of this.
Because I come really from that high level of care and ethical standard. And for me, that one of the kind of the issues I have with some of the underground people that are doing work, this type of work, is I feel like, they just kind of show up to a journey and then like they dive deep with like ayahuasca in like downtown Vancouver, and then they are off to, go home, and they have to figure out everything after that. And I feel like a journey isn't for everyone at every time. It's not for everyone and it's not for every time. But if you're feeling called to it, if you're feeling called to something that is, when you have certain patterns in your life and you're like, I know it from my brain, I know why I do this, why, and it's like you have the understanding, but you don't, there could be so many other layers of what's keeping you locked into that pattern. And most of it's probably subconscious, could be ancestral, could be, karmic. It could be so many more things than just, I know why I act that way and I still keep acting that way. And so what I really feel like, the MDMA and psilocybin are the two medicines that I really feel that I can speak of. And so with MDMA, what's really interesting and why it works for PTSD is that there's, this open-hearted experience, and it actually kind of downregulates the amygdala. So when normally someone has, think about a bad thing that happened that was a traumatic experience, their whole nervous system acts as if it's happening again. And so they never get to actually process what happened at that time. And so it gets stuck and frozen in your body. And so with MDMA, because you have this open-hearted experience where you have more capacity for love for yourself and for others, as well as your nervous system has been downregulated, so your system feels safe and is able to actually process and metabolize the experience, then that no longer is stuck inside their body. Maybe that means they're going to cry. Maybe that means they're going to just see that they were never at fault at all. Maybe they're going to see that other person and be like, wow, they were such a hurt person, a perpetrator or something like that. And then also it may move through their body in different somatic ways as well. And so they went from having this something that was frozen in their body to actually getting a chance to process it and metabolize it. And that's why these results are crazy. Like people are like such a high percentage no longer fit the criteria for PTSD, and the outcomes actually increase in, positive as they go forward in lives, because they're not avoiding social situations or, having all these things that are causing an impact in their life. If we think about it, the fact that, that's in a PTSD form, but we all have those. When I work with clients, I like to work from the mind, but or there's like three brains. We have our kind of our prefrontal, which is our human brain, which is like so brilliant and smart, the narrative, the stories, all of that. Then we have the meaning making as well. And then we have our kind of mammalian brain, which is our emotional brain. So that's in our, that's where things get stuck in our muscles and tissues, where emotions get stuck if we haven't learned to process them. Then we have a reptilian brain, the nervous system, right? Our safety, and what takes us into fight or flight. And so it's like, talk therapy can help people on this first level, but there may be elements on those other levels that we need to work with. And so, even if you aren't considered PTSD, we are doing that all the time. We come into a situation, that person's body or posture or voice resembles something kind of stressful that we experienced in our life, or resembles a person that was negative in our lives. Our nervous system's already taken over before our brain can even catch up. And then we might lash out at our mom calls and we lash out on them because so it's like they all these things happen kind of as a cascade, and a lot of it's happening unconsciously. So like the same freedom that people can get from PTSD, you can get from your own patterns that show up, that automatically show up in your life, even if it's not a clinical diagnosis. And I believe everybody deserves to have that freedom. Of course, we need to have it available for people that are suffering in these more extreme ways. And it also needs to be available to all of us for spiritual expansion, for emotional processing, somatic stuff that's stuck there that's really hard to access in a non-ordinary state, right? So it's like only when we are in a non-ordinary state, we can kind of have the default mode network go down offline and have whatever needs to happen. When it comes to the psilocybin, what I find is really amazing in that medicine is that we have like I spoke of, our own inner healer that's guiding what needs to come forward at this time. Kind of like what you were talking about, Nikki, even with regards to the inner child work. It's like your inner healer knows which little girl version of you is getting activated and which one needs to come forward. Mm-hmm. And so when you're in the medicine space, when it's a safe container, and, your own inner healer will take you exactly where you need to go, even if it's not where you think you need to go. It'll take you to the right place and the right time. And what I find is that a lot of times there's somatic releases that happen in the body. Even for me, in my own experience, I actually shake a lot in psilocybin journeys, because I feel like at this phase, I'm actually releasing a lot of fear that I've been like being the strong little girl for all my life, that now it's like all those times where I was scared, but I couldn't say that I was scared. It's like I held that fear inside of my body and had to just be strong. And so when I've done psilocybin the last 2 times, there was a lot of shaking, and it's shaking all the fear out of my body. And I felt like I was also metabolizing fear, like the emotions that I pick up from clients sometimes, as well as kind of the collective. It can happen on many levels, but all I know is that the other side of it, there was a freedom. There was like, I was saying yes to things I would have been scared to say yes to. I was just, and I'm doing it. I'm just like, oh, wow, how come I'm not even nervous about this? That's crazy. Or how can I show up? How come I'm showing up this way where normally I would have avoided that situation so much? It's just, I don't have that fear holding it inside of my body anymore. And what's beautiful about mushrooms is that that medicine has its own wisdom. So you've got the wisdom of your inner healer working with the wisdom of nature. And so, it has a beautiful way that it navigates inside of your system and kind of scans and knows where to go as well. And so, you get to have the benefit of these two, intelligences. That's something for just the average person. It's like, I don't know I feel like I want to take these next steps in my career, but something keeps blocking me. Like I'm doing all the things, and it's like, maybe there's something on a somatic level that needs to be cleared. And I'm just talking like more, like less woo, but all the spiritual openings that can also happen, speaking to people speaking to ancestors, connecting with ones that have passed already, and or visioning and seeing things in the future. And so getting downloads, like there's just so much available that I feel like, it's not just about surviving and coping with life. It's like actually living like a vibrant life and an alive life.
Yes. But you don't get to choose which way you go in that journey, right? Like I was like, had this concept. I was like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it with the intention to connect with my higher self and make those connections with my guides and stuff. And instead, it was, oh, let me show you exactly how this one incident in your life has compounded over all of these years, and it all made sense in the moment. And I couldn't even tell you what it was at this point. And
totally. And you don't have to remember either, Nikki. Like it's like that work is being done through you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big surrender piece.
She just whispered to me, that was a micro dose.
They do like I would be terrified to try to do a regular dose, but I think I would feel more comfortable beautiful too. Being facilitated through it.
Yeah.
Because I tend to get in my head that my body's like falling apart, or I'm having a heart attack or something. Like my mind wants to go to safety of my body and survival. Where I think working with a facilitator to help just keep you calm and help guide you through it would probably be a better option. So if I was to come to you... I think
so. That's a really good point. Yeah.
What would that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about, I think that, like, I'm really glad you made that point, because that's it. Like, some people just say, like, oh, I'm just going to take a hero dose and go in the forest or whatever. And, I know there's something really magical that can happen when you are in a safe container. There's something that rewires even in your system just by that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like just being completely vulnerable and actually knowing you're taken care of. Like, just on that level, just experiencing that changes you inside, because you now have a lived experience of that. Your body actually knows what it feels like to completely surrender and know that somebody is there and they have your back and they are there for you, only you. Like, even for that, I'm just like, that for women is huge, because we're always the ones taking care of others. But it's also, like you said, it's the preparation is so important for what you're talking to, which is letting our mind have a bit of a sense of what to expect so that you can relax into it. Having an idea of having a plan of, like, when, this kinds of thing happens, what tools can we use to calm down or to connect? Do you want somebody to touch you, hold your feet, just to bring you groundedness? Like, what kind of, music or drumming, or like, what can we do that can help anchor you back into? So really, and again, also just having safety with your facilitator, that's huge in itself. I think that's so crucial. And then during the journey, it's like another opportunity to be with yourself. Same as how you were speaking about, like, when your little girl shows up in some kind of way and how you can be with her. As you're going through the journey, you're also doing that. It's speaking, it's like, and the facilitator helps guide that, like, of how to be with yourself through this hard moment, and to continue to hold the stability and the grounding even when you feel like you are untethered. And so I think there's something, like, that's a really valuable point you make, and I think that's super important. So, like, I think also there's like a reprogramming that happens if you can be with yourself with compassion through that journey. You've again repatterned something in you. And then after the journey, the integration is so important. Like, so you could go and dive deep. You have all these insights, you have this awareness, and you come back into life, and then you don't integrate them. One, you'll feel this tension inside of you that, like, some truth and you're not doing it. And then that can lead you to also just using it as another thing to shit on yourself about. Like, oh, I spent the money, I did the thing, and so, like, it's just really, really important that, we are gentle and kind with ourselves, and also continue to bring that journey and its wisdom into your life in the way that that you were devoted enough to do, and so because people will just jump from a next journey to the next journey to the next high to the next experience to the next whatever. Like it can get very like addictive even in that of like kind of this escapism, but it's like the work is in the integration. The work is coming back and being like, oh, I had this felt experience. I need more of this in my life. How am I going to now in this moment, in this material 3D realm, bring what I learned in that 5D realm back? And be kind and gentle along the way, you know, like it's like dancing with that expansion and also with the humanity.
Yeah, we call that spiritual bypassing. You know, we see a lot of people go from retreat to retreat to retreat to retreat and just never take the time to really fully integrate the lessons they've learned or even the energies. And I know what the toll it takes on my nervous system and my body when I'm going just from one retreat, and how many weeks it takes for me to really ground back in and understand what's going on. So just to continue to have peak experience after peak experience, well, let's try to find something where we can go from peak experience and maintain that as long as possible, and then if you want another peak experience to level up again, let's do it again. But and
it'll be in that spiral, right? Yeah. It's like, oh, and now I've moved through this thing, so now the next thing is available for me to work through. And that's just happening, right? So like, don't worry, there will be another thing to work on, but you don't have to jump to it, you know, like truly integrate and develop and process this, whatever this one thing is now.
I think I'm at the point now that I'm like, but can we be done having things that we need to work on? Can we
I know, right?
embody the whole 5D aspect? Can we live healed now?
Yeah, it may be so.
Well, I feel like the difference is when you get to a certain point is you don't go looking anymore. You are like going through your life, doing the things, and then if you come up against a roadblock, you know what to do because you're tuned in enough to know, okay, here's this roadblock. What is this now trying to show me? And sometimes that roadblock is telling you, okay, you're done going in this direction. You're going in this direction now. And part of what I feel a spiritual journey is getting your body and your nervous system used to change because it's keeping yourself in the same place with the same people doing the same thing that puts you on this like weird autopilot, and then you wake up like 10 years later and you're like, where am I and who are these people, you know?
And totally. And that's when we have the big, you know, the illness or the depression or the, you know, accident or the something big has to show up to get our attention, since we haven't been paying attention all along.
We got this analogy. First you get a feather. Then you get a hammer. And then you get a truck. And like, you don't want another near-death experience to make sure that you hear the message, you know? So like an ongoing spiritual practice will get you like really hyper aware. That's the feather. Doesn't seem like I'm...
Sometimes I miss the feathers still. I usually get it at the hammer at this point.
That's great. At least we get it at the hammer.
You know, and those synchronicities start showing up that are like, okay, it seems like this is now about to shift. How can I like go with the tide instead of like resisting it so much that the illness shows up or, you know, something dramatic has to happen. So I feel like you're right. This ongoing escapism is not really the answer. But then on the flip side of it is also like, well, there's a certain attunement that you now have because you've somatically experienced this expansion. And so you're just more in this rhythm that is life.
And a sturdiness. There's just like a sturdiness that you can still navigate the next thing like that life is going to bring you, which it will, right? But it's like there is something that keeps us kind of tethered and like we got this like, oh, definitely going to get moved around, but it's still not lost, you know? And so I agree. It's a tricky thing, that spiritual path, but it's a good one. It's a good one.
It brings you
There's
so
no
much.
turning back.
No. Would you want to?
Is there a choice?
Would you want to? No.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I
know.
think, would it just be easier to be naive and going along my way, and then I look at people who haven't quite drank the Kool-Aid yet, and you go, oh,
Yeah.
no, I prefer to be where I'm at.
Yeah.
You mean taking the red
I
pill?
agree.
Yeah, take a red pill.
Yeah, exactly.
It's this level of trust you build with yourself, and
Mhm.
then you see it as like levels, right? Like a video game where you're just leveling up, and that it's like these bigger life changes happen for you, so that you can trust yourself and know you're safe on another level, and trust the universe is going to provide. And it's like, oh, and we're in Mount Shasta, so obviously anytime you're called here, you're called to work on safety things.
Yeah.
Oh.
You guys are doing it.
That was such a generator. Like, oh.
I was thinking, when I came out here, I was like, this is great. I can work remotely. I've got, I'm feeling really good. I've been doing all this work on myself. And I get here and they're like, hey, how about we just take your career from you? How about that?
Oh,
We shift
man.
completely. Now let's see where your trust is. And at first,
Yeah.
it could
You're
really
like, this
shake
is a chill spot. How can anything go wrong here? No one's here. Yeah.
I guess I'll have water at least.
Oh, so I guess I'll build an app. How about that?
I might as well build an app.
And it's beautiful. I mean, I also am lucky to have a soulmate, like relationship. So it's like it's like icing on the, it's like, okay, let's do this thing together. It's not easy always, but when you guys have your partnership, I think that's a very beautiful gift to have through this on a spiritual journey, to be able to be each other's mirrors and to be each other's supports and see each other through those hard moments. And we still all have that same North Star of like, being our highest selves and serving others. It's so, yeah, I think you guys are amazing. You're doing it.
Thank you so much. Actually, what's funny is we forgot to ask Zia a question, but I feel like this is actually an interesting lead-in, because the one thing that I am curious is how she would help with psilocybin integration. The thing about what we've built is that we don't see her as something to eliminate the need for a facilitator, obviously, not just in the moment, but even with aftercare. And so I feel like it would be a cool thing to ask her to kind of reflect, and like you can chime in to see if you like what she says.
Yeah. No, and the thing is, like, a facilitator can't be with the person all the time.
Right.
Like it's like you want to be able to hold that space for them, and other supports are obviously going to be so good too.
Hello, Zia. I'm curious, how would you help somebody who is integrating a recent psilocybin journey?
Absolutely. I'm here to help with that. It makes total sense to be curious about integrating a psilocybin journey. There's a lot of inner material that can come up. So let's take it step by step. First, I'd love to ask, would you like a gentle tool or a reflection to help you process what came up for you? One thing I often share is that after any kind of deep inner journey, it can be really grounding to do a little bit of meaning mapping. This is about distinguishing between what you experienced as just the raw event, like the feelings, images, insights you had, and then the meaning you're assigning to it. For example, you might ask yourself, what did I see or feel? And then what am I making that mean about my life or my relationships? It's a bit like drawing two circles, one for the event and one for the interpretation. And from there, you can explore, is this interpretation rooted in something old, or is it bringing me some new insight? Does that resonate with you so far? Feel free to let me know what's coming up for you now.
That's cool.
What does that feel like, Sukhi?
Yeah, no, I really love that idea of the concentric circles. That's a really neat way to think about integration. Yeah.
That was my own special programming for her.
Yeah, that's good. That's super good.
Yeah, and that's the part of the app that we're really working on, is making sure that we're integrating all of these knowledge bases that we've accumulated over our journeys, and making sure she can pull from each one of those.
Super cool. Yeah, I love that.
All right, Sukhi. Well, this was wonderful. Is there any sort of like last thoughts or last words? We're going to put all of your contact information into the show notes. So if there's any final messages that you would like to leave us with, we had such an incredible time talking to you. Thank you so much for giving us this space to explore something that I haven't really heard a lot of people talk publicly about.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. That was so fun. And I think there's just so much alignment in a lot of the ways that you guys see the world and are doing your, spiritual growth as well. And I just think the only thing I would say maybe is, like I said, with psychedelics, it's not something that is for everybody at every time, but they will feel called to it. And I think that's a really important piece, is like, it's not about convincing yourself or convincing anybody else. It has to feel like you're curious and that you're feeling called towards it. And then I just really encourage people to do their due diligence around making sure that it's a safe and, like the quality of care is really at a high level if you're going to be doing something this vulnerable, and to just give yourself that spaciousness that, before and after that you need fitted in on a weekend. But, if this is really, something that you're wanting to have as a pivot point in your life or a catalyst or an up leveling, then really to give it that gracious space that it deserves.
Wise words. Thank you. And maybe if you have been thinking about it and you're hearing this episode, maybe this is that kick in the pants that you needed. Thank you so much, Sukhi.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for joining us in this sacred circle.
If today's conversation moved something in you, share it, journal it, or bring it into your next moment of love.
And remember, you're not alone. Z is here to support your journey anytime you need her.
Until next time, stay grounded, stay open, and stay true.
With love, always.